So Freelancer and Wing Commander are having a baby. This is gonna be great. It's been a long time since we got a good space sim. And Chris Roberts is back on board for this one, and he's been saving up all his ideas for this. I'm definitely on board. This is a man who knows how to make some great games. Go ahead and take my $30. 2 years, that seems kind of early, but I'm sure it'll be great. So this is 2 separate games now. This website layout is terrible for new people. Is it a game package? Does Fly Now mean playing the game? Or is this subscription based? Do I have to buy Squadron 42 separately? Why are all the game packages ships? Oh my god, these prices. $15,000? What's happening? Well, I guess people are buying this. Why is everyone buying this? What's the deal with Star Citizen? I played the alpha and there's some good stuff here, really groundbreaking technologies, fun gameplay, but they have a long way to go. Why do they have a long way to go? See, Star Citizen came out during the wave of crowdfunding games at the end of 2012. I was pretty skeptical of crowdfunding. I still am. Pre-ordering is usually pretty dumb, but in this case you don't actually know if you're gonna get what you're ordering. A lot of them didn't even guarantee a product. Just ask Tim Schafer. So for the most part I thought it was a good way to throw your money into a drain. There have been some high-profile failures, like developers wasting all the money they were given to make the game, or a voice claiming to be the Sun saying they couldn't work on it anymore. It's reasonable to accept these kinds of setbacks. If the Sun says stop, your project is over. At the same time, there are enough successful games that crowdfunding is a thing now, but none are bigger than Star Citizen. So how did this happen? How did Chris Roberts assemble a giant nerd herd to give him over over $100 million? Let's take a look at the pitch.
Hi, I'm Chris Roberts. Ever since I saw Star Wars as a wide-eyed 8-year-old, I dreamt of being a hotshot pilot saving the galaxy or a lovable rogue making my way across the cosmos.
Chris Roberts is an industry veteran. He knows what he wants to make, and he knows how he can sell it to his audience. The pitch of Star Citizen is simple. A combination of Wing Commander's campaign, complete with drop-in co-op, and a multiplayer universe to be familiar to Freelancer and Privateer players. It had a lot of elements that I look for in a pitch. It was being led by Roberts, who is an industry veteran and not just some guy with a big idea, so I had a feeling that he knows what he's doing. Lots of Kickstarters will talk about their features, but Chris Roberts had footage and assets to back them up. Here's how spaceships will work. By the way, here's a video showing the spaceship in the game, showing how it works. As it turns out, proving you can make the game is good for funding the game. It went way over its initial funding goal. At the end of their Kickstarter campaign, they made about $6.2 million, which was about triple the cost of the $2 million they asked for. But even with all that success, I wasn't really sure if they could still keep in budget. I could just see a lot of costs piling up for the game and all the stretch goals. But I guess he'd made games before, so I figured he could pull it off. It had to be privately funded already. He had gone to crowdfunding so he could add in more features and get the game finished. I mean, he was already showing everyone assets, so I figured that he had something there. And the stretch goals were promising so much, like a fully crewable and flyable carrier and over 100 systems on launch. I was kind of right, but I got it backwards. He actually wanted to do the crowdfunding to show private investors that people wanted this game, and so he was going to get the rest of the money from them. When the game hit $23 million, he said it was fully funded by them, so it was all in the hands of the people. When they hit this mark in October 2013, Roberts gave everyone a choice. They could either stop the funding and have a big mission accomplished banner on the website, or they could get a fund counter and keep going with it. Only 5% of players wanted the game as is. I was part of that 5%. 88% of everyone else wanted to keep going with it, so they kept going with it. To be fair, this is a tricky situation. You have an overwhelming amount of the community saying they want to give you more money to keep developing the game, and only a small percentage who wanted to stay as was. So they kept adding stretch goals, and money kept piling in. Now fans like to say that there is no feature creep in this game, but they were adding stretch goals up to the $60 million range. Money came in, features kept being added, and the time to make kept being piled onto the project. It didn't look like it would ever end. We're nearing 2 years past the Kickstarter delivery date, and we still have a long way to go. What people backed in 2012 isn't what's being made anymore. No one knows what the release version will be. You can't really argue that you'll be getting everything you asked for and more, because even Chris Roberts knows what's going to be in the release version. He said it himself.
We'll have what we sort of determine as sort of a minimum viable product feature list for what you would call Star Citizen, the commercial release, which is basically when you say, okay, we've gotten to this point and we still got plans to add a lot more cool stuff and more content and more functionality and more features, which by the way includes some of the later stretch goals we have, because not all of that's meant to be for absolutely right here on the commercial release.
Minimum viable product. What's even going to be in it? Is Chris Roberts going to ask the sun? You might think I'm being a little too hard on Chris Roberts. He's a perfectionist. Shouldn't that mean that his game will be the best he can make it be? Well, the problem is perfection takes time. If you've watched any of their videos or read through Jump Point, you'll see everything goes through Chris. He's making a universe, and he is its god. From uniforms to spaceships to bars, he decides everything and has the final word. So why is this a problem? Well, it happened before, and it was called Freelancer.
All this has happened before, and will happen again.
Freelancer started development in 1997, under Digital Anvil, Chris Roberts' company, and he had big ideas for the game. He wanted to make a virtual universe, where star systems would have advanced AI to have an economy that would run without players, but you could influence their actions. You could visit planets that would have transportation weather systems, thousands of players able to play inside of the universe, pursuing missions, doing missions with other players, and a single-player element that, wait, does this sound kind of familiar to you? It's Star Citizen. See, he said in the pitch that he was waiting for technology to catch up before he made the game of his dreams, but he actually made an attempt before. When he revealed Freelancer at the 1999 GameStop, people couldn't believe it. Wow, they said. These graphics look like shit. But everyone loved everything else about Freelancer. People were skeptical about his claims of having a living economy and other features, but it was winning all the most anticipated in Game of the Show awards. He promised everyone who'd release the game in 2000. But the game had issues, and he wanted to put in new features, so it was delayed to 2001. It was in this time that Microsoft came into the picture. Microsoft is one of those evil video game publishers, the one that hates freedom and creativity and artists. I think the indie game community should come together and formally request the United States government to try and execute these people for their crimes. No, but seriously, Freelancer was a mess. They were a year and a half behind schedule, were massively over budget, and they didn't have the funds to even finish the game. When Microsoft bought them, Chris Roberts left the company, but he stayed on Freelancer as a creative consultant. Looking at the state the game was in, Microsoft ordered them to bring the ambition down. They took away branching conversations, automated flight control, and other intensive features. With a publisher to keep things in check, the game had a goal and a vision. But even with them on the project, it wasn't released until March 4th, 2003. The dynamic world Roberts promised was there, but the features were really brought down. The galaxy was static and the borders never changed, commodities were fixed, there was no living economy, but the campaign was praised, but not the living universe. Missions were repetitive. And all, it really wasn't what Roberts promised, but there were elements there that were really good. People still played to this day. So it came out 3 years behind schedule, with less features than promised on launch. I'm guessing that'll be the same thing here. Does that mean it'll be bad? No. But I think there's a lot of people in their community who need to have more grounded expectations. More importantly, they need to stop being so defensive about everything. Just because someone brings up a slight hint that maybe it's not going to go all as planned day one, they're not a super secret something awful saboteur out to kill your project and make we'll get to the community later. So back to Freelancer. I don't think anyone remembers Freelancer's development as well as Chris himself, which is why I think the engine chosen for this game, CryEngine, was very specific. That probably sounded stupid and obvious. Let me explain why I meant by this. CryEngine is a good engine, but in the case of Star Citizen, they've been fighting to make it work for them. They've even hired some key creators from Crytek itself to try and change the engine to make it work for them. It was built with FPS games in mind, but action games could work too. It's really hard to do it for a space game, especially when it comes to networking. So why didn't they make their own engine? Budget's a good reason. And time. Converting the engine to 64-bit and adding brand new networking to work with it is taking a long time, and it might have been easier if they just made a new engine, but that's hindsight for you. So why pick CryEngine? Unreal might have been easier to work with, or maybe another one. I've been backing up what I've been saying before, but this is going to get a little different. This is my opinion, or more like suspicion. Having access to the source code was a necessity, and the engine was advanced even if it was geared towards single-player games. But I think the engine was chosen for being pretty, rather than for its technical merits for making an MMO. I dare you to post a PS4 screenshot on the internet and say it looks good. Within about 20-30 minutes, he'll have a neckbeard there. He'll start dumping all of his Crysis screenshots from 2007, or maybe a Crysis 3 nowadays. The point of it is, no game will ever look as impressive as a good-ish series of FPS games. So Roberts, remembering that people weren't very happy with Freelancer's graphics when he revealed it, decided he would use the prettiest engine ever to show off his new spaceship game. It's the only thing that makes sense to me. Saying he did it just for the FPS features in it don't really add up. The engine was kind of notorious for netcoding issues, and he wanted to make a giant, massively multiplayer game based on it? I don't buy it. Keep in mind, he's been out of the game 12 years, and probably didn't fully understand how big of a challenge this was going to be. That's the only logical explanation for me. He knew it had issues, but severely underestimated how long it would take to fix. Even now, netcoding is still the biggest concern.
We still got to work on the networking for all these rigid entities to sort of be efficient so they're not always sending messages. Like, because basically, you know, if a cup's sitting on this table and it's not moving, there's no reason for it to say update, there's no reason for it to do anything over the network. CryEngine doesn't really work that way, so we've been spending a lot of time, and we still are spending a lot of time trying to fix and refactor that. You're sort of seeing problems that come with sort of the CryEngine old way of doing it, because really it was built as a sort of single player game, and so a lot of the updating is sort of very sort of like player centric. But the problem we have is, so for instance, you know, if you're, you know, there's 16 players on the Crusader map and they all go to different comms arrays, well, they're all triggering different AI in different spots on the server, and it's running all these AI, and then it's also telling every single client what all these AI are doing. But if I'm flying around and I'm at, you know, comm array, you know, A over here and someone's at comm array B over there, I don't really need to know what's happening in comm array B, I just need to know what's happening around my area.
Let's give the benefit of the doubt. Maybe he wanted to make a really good FPS game as a basis and then build up in scale. So the FPS thing would be one of the first things released, right? Well, no, it disappeared. I've got some ideas on what happened, though. I'm gonna explain this to people who don't know how the modules work, because the website is a confusing clusterfuck. But alphas of the game have been released in pieces. One might be just the hangar, one, Arena Commander, is nothing but combat, and one called Crusader is flying around a small mini-system. Star Marine was supposed to come out between Arena Commander and Crusader, and was all about FPS arena combat. The footage you're seeing now is from November 2014, so it was definitely made. In fact, throughout 2015 they had these constant weekly updates, saying that the game was very close, was about to be released. It seemed like it was coming out next week rather than next year. But then the update stopped, with only a vague statement by Chris later saying that they hadn't gotten it to a comfortable level yet. So what happened to it? Well, CIG thought it'd be a good idea to outsource the FPS portion of the game to another developer. That's not super unreasonable. They didn't have the monstrous funding and staff power they have now. Although, outsourcing a critical part of your game that's using an engine that's being constantly updated and tweaked might not have been the best idea. They outsourced it to a company called Illphonic. You might not have heard of them. Their latest project was doing the co-op for Sonic Boom.
Oh yeah!
But they have experience doing standalone FPS games before. They're responsible for the bubonic plague that was the Nexus remake. So what do these two games have in common? They both use CryEngine. They're sort of the McDonald's for CryNet multiplayer. CIG probably hired them, knowing that they worked on CryEngine games. So they outsourced an integral part of their game to a company known for shoddy workmanship. An understandable idea, but probably a bad one. They were still showing progress they were making though, so they had to be supportive of their work. I see two options as to how it vanished without a trace. 1. Like other products they've made, it was bad and not fun. Or alternatively, it wasn't up to Chris Roberts' ridiculously high standards. Because the scope and scale of the game had changed so much since they had pitched it to Illphonic, it might have not been good enough anymore. For whatever reason, the work just didn't meet the standard. Or 2, the game didn't function. It's possible CIG wasn't keeping Illphonic up to date with their engine changes. For whatever technical reasons, Star Marine wouldn't merge with the rest of Star Citizen. Either way, the result was them scrapping Star Marine, taking what assets they could use, and then throwing the rest out to start over. It was around the same time the company was already in some controversy for people thinking the game was going to fail and funds are being leaked. So what do you think would happen? Was Chris Roberts going to post a letter that said, "The game is doing just fine, everything is on schedule, but by the way, as a side note, we've scrapped all of Star Marine and are starting over"? Hell no. They shoved the body under the floorboards and prayed no one would look for it. They would get so much bad press it's unreal. Starting over can happen in game development, but they weren't going to share that when people were already skeptical about them, especially since they needed money to keep coming in. So now is the time to talk about that other controversy. I can safely say that everyone involved was being an idiot. In late September last year, The Escapist posted an article entitled "Eject, Eject! Is Star Citizen going to crash and burn?" Except for some history at the end, it was mainly based on some blog posts. The main article it referred to, called The Long Con, actually appears to be pretty well researched. But when you actually read through it, a lot of the more damning claims don't have a citation. They come from an unknown source or leaker, which is hard to verify. It was also written by Derek Smart, a self-declared rival of Chris Roberts's for over 20 years now. And when I say rival, I mean like a lemonade stand versus the Coca-Cola company. But their astronomical difference in success hasn't stopped Derek from being critical of the project. If you take his quotes out of context, they sound like Scipio Emilianus. He sounds like he's about to burn Carthage and put its inhabitants to the sword, instead of just blogging about some spaceship video game. Anyways, the company responded to the article by posting a brief bullet point list, showing how its information could be invalid and... Oh, that's not what happened. In response, Chris Roberts posted a 5,000-word rant against the article. He started talking about Gamergate, and posting Twitter screen caps. I couldn't believe this was real when I saw it. Like, this isn't a joke. So throughout this letter, he's trying to, attack and discredit Derek Smart. But he really doesn't need to do any of this. He doesn't even rebuke the points until the end of the letter, and even then he's still bringing Derek Smart into his answers! If he's the giant attention-seeking troll you're claiming him to be, you just made his wildest dreams come true. Why would a CEO get so defensive over a blog that a nobody wrote? So of course he gave Derek Smart more credibility than he ever had before. And then, to make things more stupid and confusing, The Escapist posted a new article, from more anonymous sources. The last article had some quotes that seemed possible, but these new claims were insane. Like claiming senior staff were sending out memos calling people faggot retards, but the offended people never forwarded or saved these emails, and senior staff would loudly say things like, "We aren't hiring a black girl," in front of employees. I know one of the employees used to have some really edgy shit on their website, but this wasn't the same person, and they were years ago and he apologized for them. It also claimed they didn't want to hire people over 40, despite a lot of the staff looking like Crypt Keeper stunt doubles. Pretty sure they have a lot of non-white employees too. It got so bad that the Escapist had to explain where each source came from. They did a terrible job at it. One of the person vetting sources claimed they used an ID card with information blacked out, but the company doesn't use ID cards. Chris Roberts, on his quest to get me to drink more, posted a new letter. He even let everyone know that corporate legal had told him not to post it. In it, he threatened to sue the Escapist, unless they apologized to staff, retracted the letter, and then let a third party investigate them for corruption or something. The Escapist politely told them to piss off. The situation was so baffling to me, I thought it would be a good idea to interview Derek Smart. I had told him I'd be doing this video in mid-April, even before my EVE Online review was out. Later, when I was doing research on him, the game, the video, and all the drama, I told him it was time for the interview. He did want the questions pre-screened, which I didn't have a problem with. I told him I was curious about where his sources came from. I also wanted to know if he thought it was hypocritical to be nitpicking a Star Citizen alpha so heavily, when he has his own game in early access called Line of Defense, which is reportedly barely functional. He suddenly became very difficult to get a hold of. He would ask what times were available, and I'd give them to him, but he wouldn't respond with when he could do it. It became a continual, maybe next week. For the record, he was very polite when I was talking to him. I also went to CIG to see if I could get some answers on the new development budget, and how it's changed since Kickstarter, but they didn't have time for that. All too busy on the game. There are better interviewers anyways.
So mining asteroids definitely will involve digging holes and drilling holes and going down inside. So what we're thinking about is finding big asteroids, and then you've got to...
Who else are you sleeping with? You're sleeping with him, you're sleeping with my lawyer.
Star Citizen has an unusual number of weirdos in it.
Greetings, citizens. We have come across some disturbing information regarding some of our fellow citizens.
Focusing on them would be unfair and low-hanging fruit, but I really want you to see this. This guy has an ancient book to judge cheaters with.
For over half a year there has been a few citizens claiming they are the best fighter pilots in the verse.
I'm gonna link his channel. He's amazing. Anyways, in my opinion, the most damaging thing to the game isn't Derek Smart or sabotage by evil publishers. It's the company and the community. The website is a confusing, unintuitive mess. I'm familiar with it, so I find it hard to navigate, so someone checking out the game probably has hell trying to dig through this. On top of this, despite having nearly twice the amount of money they asked for in the stretch goals, they still feel compelled to show these multi-$1,000 packages right on the store page. How many new players do you think immediately dropped this game the second they saw a $15,000 package next to the other ones? Can't there be some kind of compromise? like only showing the basic packages throughout the year, and then rolling out the other stuff when there's some sort of event going on or a new ship being made. I know it would be pointless to ask them to stop running their stupid ship store, but they could at least limit it. The main campaign ended 4 years ago, and we're at nearly twice the amount of money needed for the promised features. Do we really need to keep running that store? We're at the point now where people are testing the game. Do they really have to buy all the ships and weapons so they can test them and give feedback? You can post a 2-page long essay on how the game isn't pay to win, but if someone looks and sees a picture of a small $30 ship next to a $10,000 carrier, it's hard to not look ridiculous about it. Even if they have to hire NPCs to crew them, they can just buy money in the store too. Yeah, they aren't in the game yet, but someone could just be loading up on money for now, and then when the game launches, they get all of it. It's pointless to stop now since people are already loaded up on stuff, but at least you can stop scaring new players away. Compounding this problem is a sizable group of the community. Mark Hamill, a member of the cast, has referred to them as being a cult following, and it's far from the first time professionals have accused them of being a cult. Before, they were kind of laughed at just for dumping thousands on the game, but since the big Derek Smart and Escapist drama, they've become much more hostile. To criticize the game in the community, you have to go through a really embarrassing routine. If I wanted to post about a gun in PlanetSide feeling off balance, I might say, "Hey, I think the car feels like it might be overpowered." If it was structured like a Star Citizen post, I would have to say, "Hey guys, I've been playing this game since beta, and I've loved the community and the team there. I've always believed in PlanetSide, and I love it very much. However, I have a very small complaint. I feel like the gun might be overpowered. Long live PlanetSide 2, winking smiley face." Then people outside the game read these messages, and then you wonder why they call you weird and culty. The problem is if they don't do this and they get accused of being some sort of Derek Smart spy or a goon spy, or they have this ridiculous paranoia about them. I don't know if it's them expressing insecurities about the project or what their deal is, but it's really bad. I'm going to show you the worst example I saw recently. A few weeks ago, a guy went to get a refund for Star Citizen, and they said no because that'd be taking other backers' money and then giving it to him. That statement kind of bothered me because it looks like they're trying to take the high road, but a few months ago they were threatening an expensive legal suit against a magazine. Guess who would have been paying for that? So he threatens to bring in the LA Attorney General, and so they give him a refund. News sites actually reported he got a refund. If getting a refund is newsworthy, there might be something wrong with your policy. So a guy posted instructions on their subreddit about how they could get a refund. It boiled down to be polite and tell them a precedent for refunds has been set. Redditors, who use their down arrows for things they don't like, click that button a lot on this man. It's really good when discussions are only made up of people you agree with. But it did generate over 700 comments. It sort of felt like I was on crazy pills because I started reading through what the most popular comments were. And I'm gonna share some of that. People wanted refunders to have a lifetime ban from the game and be tracked by the company, calling people kiddo for wanting a refund, being mad that someone used the lawyer card and that law overrules a company's terms of service, followed by the definition of doublethink, comparing a pledge to the game to a donation to cancer research. Besides being a terrible analogy to pick, he followed up with a "you disgust me," saying refunds are criminal fraud and that the authorities should get involved, or people mad about customer protection law, posting about how to get notoriously difficult refunds is actually sabotage, you were always excess baggage anyways, I wish they'd block you, posting this is classless, old memes, even older memes, and my favorite, being mad someone just wanted the Kickstarter goal. Even if the post was meant to sabotage, that was one of the most overreactive and anti-consumer groups I've ever seen. That was just the subreddit too. The official forums are much worse, but I'm not going there. There's big parts of the community that are getting tired of this too. Chris Roberts can make cool stuff all day, but if you all keep acting psychotic, no one wants to play with you. I want to see this game succeed, because it would be incredible if they pull this off and make a super fun game. But frankly, you give me enough secondhand embarrassment that I don't talk about this game to people. A part of me would love to see it fail if it drags some of you people down screaming with it. Criticism can be helpful. Stop being so defensive and company worshipping. A combination of fanboyism and elitism is never good. Just take it down. Why can't you be more like the German fan base? They love this game to death, but they just sort of sit in their own little circles. Maybe they're more professional because they're used to playing Warehouse Simulator. I don't know. They're quiet about it, but it seems like all Germans love this game.
Nein, niemals. Star Citizen does not qualify as a true German sim game. It doesn't come near the level of perfection I expect from a simulator. Why are the ships engaging at like 10 meters from each other? Do you know how easy it is to detect objects putting out energy on a background of fucking 2.7 Kelvin? Why would all these fighter ships be shaped like planes? Why does everything look like World War II in space? Is every single deep space fighter supposed to be able to go into an atmosphere? They bother to add fucking beds to the ships, even though I bet traveling between systems won't take remotely long enough to be believable. Let alone warring sleeping mid-flight. Speak Speaking of useless crap added to the ships, who thought that adding functional toilets to the game was a good use of their time? Someone spent hours sculpting and animating and add sound to a fucking waste extraction unit. Is this where the $70 million went into?
Well, it's 117 million, but...
What? You're telling me they have $170 million by now and the game still runs like ass? Did they learn nothing from Crysis when it comes to future-proofing games? It doesn't fucking work. People would like to play the game right now and not in 10 years, which is funny because I can't see the game being released in that time in the first place. They're taking so much time on this that they started to redo their old ships and throwing even more polygons at them. The development goals are also all over the place. What started as a realistic space game has now devolved into a video game version of the Wing Commander movie. Remember that one? Chris Roberts directed it too, and we all saw where it went with a big Hollywood budget. The guy's suffering from the George Lucas syndrome where he needs someone to filter his ideas into something presentable. Realism was once touted as the main selling point of the game, but now we have World War II dogfights in space and giant fucking laser drills that no sane engineer would design. If they made a drilling laser that looks like the sun from the side, then all that energy is wasted on just glowing bright, not drilling. They just made this thing to look cool and that was the end of their considerations. It's like the development team designs something good, but then Chris Roberts comes in and just says, make the engines bigger or make it more flashy or add more spikes and make it look like you tried to 3D print a car crash and the dev team has to do it. Speaking of disaster, one of the stupidest decisions they made is that they are instancing everything. There isn't anything wrong with instancing by itself, I mean Eve does it and it works, but here they do it in a really stupid fashion. Star systems are instances so that when you go from a system to another system you go through a loading screen, which kills all immersion for long-time space travel. They might go with the Elite Dangerous approach here and play an animation, but that's still a loading screen, you can't really move between systems, that's the point. Points of interest such as a space station are also instances, and of course there is an instance around your ship at all times. So if you get jumped on by pirates, whoops, the instance is now full and nobody can come help you. Or worse, you go to some place that technically blockaded off, but whoops, the game puts you into a different instance than the bandits, and now you can just face through the blockade, like it's platform 9 3/4. Their idea of instancing belongs in a shitty Korean grind MMO that can't afford decent service, not in a supposed space simulator with this kind of budget. Alright, that's all I had to say. Good night.
I'm not sure about everything I just heard, and I'm more okay with Rule of Cool, but let's just wrap this up. If you couldn't already tell, I don't think it's a scam. At least not in the there will be no game kind of scam. Could top people be paying themselves bigger salaries for multiple roles? Sure, but that's not really illegal, just kind of shitty. I'm actually okay with their ship commercials, since in the game you can actually see them on the planets. I'm not sure why some people point to these as proof of fraud, so I thought I'd say that. It could be because it looks like all the effort is going to these commercials, but that's not the case. So if there was financial abuse going on, it would have to be investigated, and I can't really speculate on that. But I'll make a few other predictions. I think Star Marine, or its equivalent, will be unmissing very soon. Squadron 42, the single-player campaign, was announced to release in the end of this year, and I highly doubt that. It seems more likely Episode 1 would come out next year, because if it does release this year, it's probably going to be very unpolished and buggy, and Chris Roberts doesn't like that. Related to this, I think it'll be a few years before Star Citizen is out still. Squadron 42 stuff can be pumped out faster since it's mostly built as a single-player experience. You know, that's Chris's strength. It might be a cheese fest, but it'll be fun. The game systems and the sheer amount of content they'll need for the multiplayer universe is just going to take a very long time, so there will be plenty of time for more drama to happen. Final thoughts, you guys in the community need to chill out because it's a video game. People screaming scam at least need a more realistic idea of what the scam could be. The company needs an actual refund process. They should have more than enough in extra funds. In the original terms of service guaranteed a refund if it wasn't delivered within 18 months of the estimated date, which they recently changed. That wouldn't hold up in court well. Just implement a process already. Also, Derek, you're being had. After spending a few months in your Discord and talking to people there outside of it, you're sort of a joke. The old school goons you think are your friends are really just people butthurt they're being kicked out of EVE Online and they want a new spaceship game to be kings of. I find a lot of your research work pretty thorough, but a lot of it is too speculative. Also, these past few months on Twitter, you've promised a lot of breaking news, or this will destroy Star Citizen, and then nothing happens, or it's just barely relevant. So maybe only announce what's important and confirmed. Also, maybe you shouldn't outright stalk employees and their kids. I'm so exhausted. I'm gonna be a lot better talking about games and not this meta drama garbage. By popular demand, Space Station 13 is up next. We're gonna talk about clowns.